All right, assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a special edition At Their Feet. I am Zarinah El-Amin, and today I am in the lovely home of the Shakoors. So I have Brother Thaddeus Shakoor. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Thaddeus.
Walaikum salam.
And I have Auntie Bahija Shakoor. Assalamu alaikum, Auntie Bahija.
Walaikum assalam.
So alhamdulillah. So this is my first actually in-person interview, and I'm really happy I get to do it with these two right here. So alhamdulillah. All right, let's just jump right into it. So Brother Thaddeus, we interviewed you as a part of the Detroit Storytelling Project for the book At Their Feet, which is a compilation of stories of Black Muslim elders. So, Brother Thaddeus, today I kind of want to talk, and Sister Bahija, of course, right? I want to talk about your entry in the book, but I also kind of want to just to expound upon life, some big life lessons that you feel you learned. Why are you laughing? You don't have no life lessons?
Oh, there's so many. It's just it's hard to count. Well, my lessons all relate to my children.
Really?
Yes, and my first exposure to Islam. That's the beginning of my life lessons because I think that was the beginning of my life period. Because prior to being a Muslim, I was just Bertha Mae Griffin. And once I became Muslim, I gave all of that up proudly because I remember when I was a little girl, I came home from school one day, I was 6 years old. And I asked my mom, I said, Mom, why did you name me Bertha? I always hated the name.
Did you?
Yes, I did, with a passion. But when I became Muslim, I just became Bertha MX. So I was still Bertha. But then when Imam Worthy Muhammad came along and he encouraged us to select Muslim names, that's when I feel I really blossomed because I looked in this book and I found Bahija, which means bright, aloof, gay, happy, content. And when I read what Bahija meant, I said to myself, that's exactly who I was born as. I just didn't know it at the time. And I looked for a last name because at that time, Thad and I had got married and we had children. So we wanted to give all the children Muslim names. Of course, when we had them, we hadn't changed our names to Muslim names because we gave them their first names were Muslims, but their last name was still Griffin. But then when we changed the entire first and last name, then that's when they all became Shakoor as well. So my journey started when I became Muslim. And at that time,
how old were you when you became Muslim?
I was 17 years old.
17.
17 years old.
Had you graduated from high school yet?
In fact, I was just graduating from high school. Minister Wilford, who was the oldest brother of Malcolm. Malcolm's oldest brother was my first minister. And I had this cousin who was a Christian minister, Minister Hasty. He found out about Islam first. And he started going to all of the family homes, went to our house, went to my aunt's house, went to my cousin's house, all the family members he knew, he went to their home because he was a Christian preacher anyway, and he liked to go along, he liked to teach us about religion. And he would go from house to house, teaching us, telling us about this new religion that he had just found. And at the time, it was called Islam. Now, of course, we refer to it as Islam, but it was Islam at the time. And so when he came to our house, he said, I'm just giving you guys a little piece of it, but I want you to come with me to the temple so you can hear the minister there talk all about Islam. And so we did.
Wait. Let me get this straight real quick. So, so you're 17 or whatever. You have this family member who is a Christian preacher, but had found out some stuff about Islam. And so he was going around and like introducing Islam to people that he knew.
Family members.
Family members.
Right.
So he came to your house. Were your mom and dad there too?
Yeah, mom and dad was there also.
Mm-hmm.
Mom accepted it right away. Dad, of course, did not. Because my dad was a good word. I love my dad, but he was a womanizer.
Mm.
And when he came into Islam, he found out he could no longer be a womanizer.
Mm-hmm. Like, hold up.
Exactly. That's exactly that was him. And I think he probably visited the temple maybe a couple of times, but
Mm-hmm.
he never joined because he couldn't. He just could not see himself being true to one woman. In fact, because of his womanizing, I have two sisters that were born outside of my mom.
Mm.
And of course, we only found out about it like years later.
Mm-hmm.
But I was 17 years old and I was still in high school. And when I went to the temple on John C. Lodge, and Minister Filbert was the minister there. And he started talking about Islam, and of course they had these flags on the what was that area called up front?
Like the stage area?
The stage area,
Okay.
right.
Mm-hmm.
The stage area where there was a flag on one side of the United States of America, and then there was another flag on the other side that had the star and the crescent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he would begin his lectures talking about this flag and how we were once Muslims and how we were captured as slaves and brought to this country. And once we got here, of course, somehow or another we became Muslims. We discovered Islam and decided that that's what we wanted to be known as from then on, as Muslims. And I love being a Muslim. And when we changed our names, I really enjoyed a new name because I hated being Bertha Mae Jones.
This is interesting to me. I was talking to a friend of mine. I have a friend that changes her name frequently. Like literally, she just has a new identity and she will change her name legally. I mean, legally, not just like call me this. I mean, legally, she'll file the paperwork, all that kind of stuff. And I was talking about, how in some other cultures where when you become your own person, you then choose a name for yourself, But I'm wondering for you too, brother Thaddeus, like you chose this name, Thaddeus. You chose Shakoor,
No,
right?
I didn't choose Thaddeus.
Thaddeus is given to
It
you.
was given to me.
You chose Shakoor.
It's my father there.
So you're number 2 or 3?
2.
That is the second.
Junior,
right. And then you chose Shakoor for your family? Or how did Shakoor come about?
That's our family name.
That became our family name.
But how did y'all pick it?
We had this book that had a list of
found the book with a lot of Muslim names.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought that Shakoor, being thankful, we thought that was a good name for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
but it was thankful and grateful. Sounded nice. I mean,
So what was that like though, like choosing a whole new identity for your family going forward?
It was just very it was important to us. Our children didn't know what was going on, but it was a great day. I mean, it was like when the imam suggested that, we jumped right on it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to come back to this notion of like, the imam suggesting things and like being the leader, and people coming in and listening and obeying, because I think that was a very key fact of you all's generation. Like when you all came into Islam and then you had a leader that you respected that gave suggestions and you followed those suggestions or such. So I'm going to come back to that. But for the Thaddeus, for you, I know that like when I came into your home today, you had
our generation.
What? What you mean? What you mean?
She has her children, not quite as she had her children.
No, it's okay. It's all right. It's perfectly fine. It is perfectly fine. But what do you mean about our generation? You mean?
I really don't take serious meaning on it. just kind of struck me. But then actually, that's what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I shouldn't have been struck.
Do you feel like you're in a different generation than us, or do you feel like, how do you feel?
I do feel we're in a different generation, especially when it comes down. We have to manipulate these cell phones.
The technology and stuff, for sure.
Absolutely.
You were
Yeah.
born with a cell phone.
Was I born? No, I had landlines because I was born in '79. Yeah, so we had, regular landlines, and then we had beepers, like those little beepers that we used to wear and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We didn't have that.
Yeah, not in
No,
y'all had it, later on or whatever. So, okay, so Brother Thaddeus, like when I came into your home today, you were playing the jazz music, and I know that jazz like had a major impact in your life, music in general, right? But I want you to talk a little bit about that because I titled this thing "Jazz Brought Me to Islam," and I thought that it was interesting as far as like your musicianship and how music sort of opened, I guess, a pathway for you to find this tradition. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that came about?
no problem. I want to repeat what we talked about earlier about the so-called smart speaker.
Uh-huh.
When I asked the speaker to play Miles Davis, and it played Dave Brubeck. So maybe they're not as smart as they're supposed to be.
No.
Dave Brubeck is not my favorite.
Totally different.
Two different people.
Yeah.
Oh, well, who was? Oh, that's right. Dave Brubeck is another person, not a jazz person. I got you.
So when I was in New York, a good friend of mine, Wendell Harrison, suggested, well, he knew that I was looking for certain things spiritually and all that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
because we started out in Detroit.
Okay.
I met Wendell in Detroit, and so he went
How
to.
old are you, real quick? How old are you at this age?
I just turned 20.
You just turned 20. Okay.
Between 20 and 21.
Okay.
So, of course, Wendell got to New York first. I followed him, and when I got there, he encouraged me to go up to Harlem, and I did that. And when the train pulled up at 125th Street, so I come up out of the ground, and
Mhm.
there are just thousands of people, and it was something totally new to me. I mean,
Mhm.
coming from Detroit, I had never experienced something with this many people. This is New York, and it was just
Like,
just
wow.
great. Yeah, and Malcolm is speaking, and seeing these brothers, in their suit and ties or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a brand new experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It kind of just struck you as well. So wait a minute. So you came to New York to pursue your music career.
Yes.
Okay. And then you came out of the subway. You were going for that specific talk because your friend invited you?
Well, he wasn't there. He said, "Dad, take the train uptown and get off at 125."
So you didn't know what you were going
Malcolm
for?
was going to be there.
Okay.
Yeah, he
Mm-hmm.
did tell me. So, but I saw Malcolm. I think it was the prior year in New Haven. So it wasn't the first time, but it was the first time that I had seen him with so many people in one gathering.
Mm-hmm.
Up on the streets, that kind of thing.
So what was it about Malcolm that like really drew you in?
It's kind of, I don't know, the way he talked,
Mm-hmm.
the his ability to reason and to be able to answer the questions that people put to him in such a manner that it was so totally convincing,
Mm-hmm.
and I just liked the way he carried himself. He's like fearless. I mean, he was saying things that I probably would not want to say out in public,
Mm-hmm.
but he was doing a great job of it. I loved it. I could not get enough of it. It's beautiful. He was a great lecturer.
So it was the charisma and the oratory skills and
Yes.
the position, I guess, that he had. I've heard a lot of people mention that like just watching him brought them into Islam, like just seeing him being in his space, like that literally made them curious enough about Islam to want to ask questions and such. But before I go back to Sister Bahija, like Brother Thaddeus, so I can see speakers that I think are great or whatever, but it doesn't mean I want to change my whole life. Like, so how'd you go from seeing this man that has, charisma, he's speaking, you hear some stuff, to literally changing your entire life?
It is kind of weird. Well, he's always inviting you to come to the temple at the time, and he's always telling you how he learned everything from Elijah Muhammad. So it's like you have to go. I mean, after you hear that, if you're a person, like I was seeking something anyway.
You were seeking?
I was. Yeah, I was. So it was like magnetizing. I had to go further.
Were you seeking God, or what do you feel like you were seeking then?
I think at the time I was seeking something for Black people as a whole that I could be a part of, and to be able to lift us up, give us a better position in life as a community. Right. I think that's what I was looking for. But I was looking for that spiritual element also. I was seeking God at the time, but I may not have been that conscious of it. But I think more than anything, I was seeking something that was going to elevate us as a community at that time.
So you were looking for the elevation of Black people, and that part of the movement is what like attracted you and drew you in.
That brought me in, and actually, then I began to fulfill my needs for spiritual guidance also.
I think, when we talk about movements, and you have spirituality as well as the socialness, right? The upliftment of Black people. And the combination of those two, I think, is a very powerful impact on people at that moment. Like when we think about what was happening in life, all the things that are the subjugation of an entire people. And you all were looking for like we gotta come out of this. Like this ain't right. Like this ain't the life that we want, for our people. So this might be a common thread, and I'm gonna keep saying your generation. Excuse me, don't take it bad. but I feel like all the elders that we interviewed for the book, and then people that we talked to, like you guys are a special type of people. You're not just normal, regular old, like don't care about the world people. It seems like everybody has this thing about making sure that our society and community, are actually improved.
That wasn't the first time I had heard Islam.
That wasn't the first time you had heard Islam?
No, it wasn't. Actually, before I left from New York, a friend of mine invited me down on Linwood. And actually, that was the first time that I had heard Islam. I was at the temple, and and I loved what I saw and what I heard, but my thinking was at the time that this is something down the road.
After I lived life a little bit.
After I pursued and become a well-known musician and all that kind of stuff,
That was secondary too. So I became secondary. He was like, "Let me get this music thing down."
I love it, but it's a way out.
So, all right. So I'm going to put these markers in our head. And hey, everybody, for those of you who are just joining us, this is At Their Feet. I'm Zarinah El-Amin, the publisher of this book, At Their Feet, with Dr. Elisa Perkins and Aya Rashid, who assisted as well. And I'm sitting in the lovely home of the Shakoors, for the Thaddeus Shakoor and Sister Bahija Shakoor. And we're talking about, their journey to Islam. We're talking about community life, family, all of that. Like that's what we're talking about today. If you do not have the book yet, go over to Amazon. You can pick it up. And I think it's still, the paperback, I think it's still only $7.54. So you can still, get the book very inexpensively. There's also the hardcover that's on there as well. And for those of you who are joining us, drop us a comment and let us know where you're joining us from, just so we can kind of see, of course. And share this out. Share it out on your pages and all your social media stuff as well, right? All right, so we have Sister Rahija, 17. Somebody comes into her living room the same way I'm in your living room right now, right? And is talking about this religion, talking about this. Well, was he talking about the spiritual part, or was he talking about the social part too, the upliftment of Black people?
I think Hasty was more spiritual because he was already a Christian minister.
Okay.
And when he found out about Islam, it was like he just flipped. He gave up Christianity and became a Muslim minister. And in fact, at one time, I believe he was the minister at Masjid Wali Muhammad. I do know that he married Elijah Muhammad's niece,
Okay.
Brother John and Sister, what was her mother's name? Brother John Muhammad and Sister. They lived on. Oh, my memory leaves me from time to time. But at any rate, Lavella was the niece of Elijah Muhammad.
Okay.
Her father was Brother John Muhammad, and her mother was Sister.
Is that Bernstein?
Bernstein.
Okay.
Her mother was Sister Bernstein.
Okay.
Right.
I just was at with her daughter, Sister Medina, the other day.
Oh yes. You see, Medina, we kind of grew up together because I don't think she's quite as old as I am, but that's because Sister Bernstein used to have her at her house. Okay. She would have the young sisters from the temple to come to her house where we would sit and talk about Islam and talk about MGT things. At that time, there was a class that the girls and the women were a part of, and it was referred to as MGT and GCC, the Muslim Girls Training and General Civilization class. And Sister Bernstein would teach that class from time to time. So she had us at her house, and Medina was there, and her other sisters was there. I can't recall their names right now, but we were all gathered at her home, and we would sit around and listen to her mom teach us about what women are supposed to do as Muslims. That's why it was called MGT and GCC, in General Muslim Girls Training and General Civilization class.
What kind of stuff were y'all learning?
We were taught. Actually, I think I felt good because it taught us how to become good wives, how to become a good mother, how to become a good sister, and how to relate to people. Because we were Christians, and we went to church, and we weren't taught those. Even though my mom became Muslim, but she wasn't bright enough to teach us about Islam because she didn't learn enough herself about Islam. She was going and learning like we were learning. And of course, my dad, he never did, except he would visit.
How old was your mom when she came in?
My mom was, let's see, she was 82 when she died, and so I'm thinking she was probably about. She was still in her 60s.
Wow.
Maybe, yeah, 60s. Maybe even 50s, because in fact, when Mom heard it, she fell in love with it also right away, and she became a Muslim, and we all attended the MGT and GCC classes, and what have you. I have a sister, Dolores, who also attended the classes and heard about Islam and would attend the masjid listening to Minister Wilford. But she decided that she did not want to become I should say a full-time Muslim, because even now she attends the church. Okay. And we don't have a problem with that, because whenever her church has a revival or some kind of special, she invites, and she knows that I'm strictly Muslim, she'll invite us to come, and I'll go, and we'll sit and listen to her minister talk about Jesus and Christianity and all those kinds of things. But Dolores never really, I think she accepted Islam, but she never really participated in Islam like I did. When I heard about Islam, I just fell into it whole sink and barrel. It was what I needed to become: a good woman, a good wife, a good mother. I also wanted to go to school and do something with my life. I didn't want to just be a housewife. And it was Minister Wilford who encouraged me to go to school. I sat and talked to him one day and I said, you know what, Minister Wilford, I love Islam, but I don't want to be just a Muslim housewife. I want to have a career. I want to do something with my life. So he says, well, do that. He said, well, what would you like to do? I said, well, I really would like to be a nurse. He said, well, then you should pursue that. And so it was part of that kind of information, that kind of advice that really sent me to New York, because I tried a lot of the nursing schools here in and around Detroit. None of them would accept me. In fact, I went to this one, I think it was Mercy School of Nursing at the time. And she called me in for an interview. And when she saw that I was who I was, she said, well, we would like for our girls who attend this school to be a lot brighter. At the time, I had no idea if it was brightness in intelligence or if it was brightness in complexion or whatever. And so I knew I was neither. I knew that I was never going to be a very, very smart person. So I could not apply. I would never enter their school. But what happened is I went to this one nursing school that the lady there she was Caucasian also. And when I told her what I wanted to do was to be a nurse, she was the one who directed me to the Black nursing school in New York. And I had absolutely no idea that this school existed. In fact, every time I think about it, I think Allah, because if it were not for Allah sending me to that particular director of nursing, I would have never known about Harlem Hospital in New York. And of course, I just wanted to be a nurse. When she told me where it was, I said, I've never been out of town. I want to find a school here in New York, in Detroit, that I can attend. She says, well, it's a Negro nursing school and you might do very well there. And I said, well, oh, then tell me how to join then. She gave me all the instructions. I rode away to Harlem, and Harlem accepted me that summer. I went home and packed up my clothes, and my sister Dolores, who heard about Islam but never really became entwined in it.
Right.
She and her husband drove me to New York to attend Harlem Hospital School of Nursing. And of course, once I got there, I kind of got wild though.
That's how you met this.
Yes. I went to New York and in fact, I was doing so poorly in nursing school that my instructor pulled me aside and said, I was still birthed at the time. She said, Miss Poole, plus I had married before. Before I met that, I met this brother at the temple and again, I was 17. He had been married before, and I saw him one Sunday as I was leaving the temple, and he started to talk to me, and I talked to him. And so after we had talked for a while, he asked if I would marry him. And I didn't know who except for his name and the fact that he had been married before and had a 7-year-old son. And I'm like a 17-year-old girl. I'm thinking, getting this older man who will take care of me and treat me like a queen and all that stuff. But that didn't happen. I think he just married me because, I was marriage material. But we eventually divorced. And
how old were you then?
I was 17. I was 17 when I got married the first time.
And when you divorced,
and when I was divorced him, I must have been, because it was like I was 18 because we had been married for like a year, right? So the marriage was very short. The one thing that I also believe that Allah blessed me to do, when I took him home to meet my mother, Mama said, well, you know what? I'll only give you permission to marry her if you don't make her pregnant. Because she's still in school. I was still in school at the time, high school. She says, because I went
high school, getting married, 17.
She says, so I'll only approve, because she and my dad were separated. So I took him home to meet Mom, and Mom says, I'll only give you my approval if you promise me you don't make her pregnant. So I'll give you that promise. I mean, I'll say, okay, fine, you guys can get married. So we went ahead and we got married, and he kept his word. He did not impregnate me. He protected me from being pregnant.
How old was he?
He was, I think he was about 6 or 7 years older than me.
Okay.
And I really was kind of, because I've heard teenage girls talk about marrying older men, how they would take such good care of you, treat you like a queen because they feel like
She was trying to get that fairy tale love. You got it later in life, though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Allah bless me to get that fairy tale love even. But I didn't get it though until I went to New York, because that's where I met Thad, in New York. Now, when I got to New York, one day I was leaving the temple there, number 7, after we had listened to Malcolm. We hanging out on the sidewalk, listening to him talk and some sisters and brothers and what have you. Thad comes up to me and says, "Didn't I see you in Detroit this summer?" And of course, I looked at him and I said, "Oh, gee, I don't know." I said, "Because I live in Detroit. I'm only here in New York attending school." I said, "So you may have seen me at home this summer." And so we started seeing each other while we were still in New York.
Did you know her from Detroit?
No.
Well, how did you know? Oh, you asked. You had inquired that she was from Detroit. What's your game for the Thaddeus? How did you know her name?
Sorry, look at wrong.
So
But that's not a problem. We kind of have a little difference.
He always tells me that when I tell people how we met.
No, we met on the train.
Oh.
Yeah, up in Bronx, New York. And this is at the masjid on Lennox had been firebombed.
Oh wow!
Some of Malcolm's opponents firebombed the temple number 7. So we were up in the Bronx because we went up there and got a storefront and we fixed it up. And so that's what we had been having our meetings there. So this particular day, we were all on our way back down to Manhattan, and she was on the train. So she did look familiar for some reason. And I said,
your soul knew her.
I just kind of kindly answered, I've seen her before. That's
the rest of history.
So, yeah.
You see, brother, so he saw somebody he liked and then he went after it. So that was how you two met. How long have you been married now?
54 years.
54 years.
We didn't get married right then, though, because he had to pay a debt to Uncle Sam. And of course, once I was done with nursing school, we thought we were going to get married and live in New York, because I love New York, and I thought we would just, find an apartment or a house or something and live in New York. But when he had to pay this debt to Uncle Sam, I left New York and came back home, because I figured after he paid his debt, we would eventually hook up again, which we did, because when he came home, he attended the mass.
We kind of agreed that Detroit was better.
But were you upset that she left you because of this debt? How did you feel about that? Or did you decide, like, okay, let me take care of this before I get married?
Actually, I didn't have anything to do with it.
Uncle Sam is the one who did it. Right.
I was at work one day and I got a call from the FBI. So they told me, you would either come down voluntarily or we'll come and get you.
Oh, they put you in.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, how long were you in there?
No, I didn't register for the draft. That's what I forgot to do when I got to New York. Had I registered and said I was conscious objective.
My bad. Hold on. I thought we were talking about taxes, but you're talking about taxes or draft?
No, we're talking about the draft.
Oh, my bad. Okay. I forgot. So all of y'all had to sign up.
Yeah, wherever you are. So when I left Detroit, it was my job to register when I got to New York.
Okay.
But it was the furthest thing from my mind. I never thought about it. I'm just living the single life and enjoying everything. So at work one day, I get a call from the FBI saying come down and et cetera, and they said, well, you could bring some money in post bail. So that's what I did. And but I had about 3 months to get my affairs together.
Wow.
Yeah.
And see, back then, the men in Islam, they weren't supposed to go to war because our objective, we were supposed to be conscientious, they were supposed to be conscientious objectors and say that because we're Muslim, our religion teaches us that we can't go killing other people, Muslims, Christians, anybody. So, they were supposed to give the Muslim men to become a conscientious objector. And that's what he requested, but they refused to give it.
It was too late at that point.
So I went down and I was able to post bail, and I had
Do you
about
remember how much it was?
$50.
That was a lot of money. $50. A lot of money.
So they let me go. Told me, you got this amount of time. So, but when they asked me down there, I came down there and wanted me to step forward, and I didn't step forward. So that set in motion a lot of things I had absolutely no control over. I mean, it's weird being giving up your life, and then saying, okay, judge says to you, okay, you have 5 years. So, but I actually didn't serve for 2 years. I guess they gave me
all because you didn't go into the draft.
Yeah, I refused to step forward and go into the army.
So they put you in jail for 2 years.
Yeah.
They said 5, but you served 2. Huh. How'd you get out early? Or did they just?
Well, I guess a matter of being, I went up to the pool and said, fine,
Dang, it's jacked up, man. They be messing people's lives up. So I don't want to go kill. So you're going to put me behind bars for years. All right. I thought we were talking about taxes and we were talking about something totally different.
But he wasn't the only one. When he went into jail, prison, he had other brothers that the same thing had happened to them because some of them refused to go and fight in the military. Some did, but some did not.
There was a large community of Jehovah's Witnesses also.
It really?
Yeah, they were there.
Who refused to go and fight.
So, I mean, we had company. But there was some, there were other Muslims there too.
Uh-huh.
Back to the time, there were other Muslims who had avoided the draft like I did. But then there were the career criminals who had become Muslim. And of course, what they saw as Islam was a lot different than what we were taught. So we became kind of like mentors for them. So we had to keep the jailhouse Islam moving forward. I did the best I could,
Wow. So you're in there. And then how old are you then? 25?
No, I was like 23 or 4.
Okay. Yeah. And you had to go away for 2 years. And so y'all were together, planning your life, thinking y'all gonna be good. And then this joker, Uncle Sam, come jacking stuff up.
But I told him that I would wait for him. At the time, I wasn't sure exactly how much time he would need to, spend in prison. But whatever time, you go on and do that. I'm going to go back to Detroit. We'll meet up again in Detroit. And when we
didn't make that decision until later. You just stayed in New York. You had to finish school, first of all.
Well, yeah, I stayed in school long enough to finish school. But then once the school was over, I came back to Detroit because I would visit him in the prison that he was in. Because he was drafted in New York, but eventually he got sent to a prison here in Michigan.
Interesting.
And when I found out he was in Michigan, I said, well, I'll just pack up my studs and go on back home, and then I can see you. We can still communicate, see each other once I get to Michigan. And we did. I would drive up there. Sometime I'd go by and pick up his parents, and his mother would make a dish or something. And because he was a good person in the prison, they would allow him to come out and sit on the lawn, and we would put a table.
You'll have picnics in prison. Look at this. Picnics in prison. Wow.
So, we would, in fact, I tried to see him at least once a month, because I wasn't sure what prison life was like or what food was like and stuff. But when I first met Thad, it was like I felt a closeness to him. And even though I had got married before and it didn't work out, he was different
Mm-hmm.
than all the other guys that I knew. And I knew another brother in New York that, we talked and what have you. But he wasn't like,
He said, "This news to me."
we talked, out on the sidewalk while we waiting for the subway to take us back to our place to live. But I still didn't. I didn't take to him.
Mm-hmm.
But then, even though Thad and I met in New York, but most of our time was spent knowing each other and falling in love with each other when he got to prison. Because we would write letters. He'd write me letters. I'd send him letters. In fact,
Did you really write those letters? Because I heard some people in prison, it'd be their friends that be writing these letters. Like, were you really writing them? Okay.
In fact, I have a box around here somewhere.
And I heard they got a whole little, letter writing business up in there where they write these letters outside. You really wrote.
And I have a box. I thought I have it on one of those shelves up there.
A poet of some sort.
Yes, yeah.
It went along with the musicianship.
Yes,
The artistry. Okay. All right. So, a lot of women wouldn't have stayed, during something like that, but you already were in love with him. Well, you already had an opening to your heart, to him that Allah showed you, like, okay, this dude's solid. He's solid.
And his parents, when I left New York to come back to be with him, to see him more frequently here in Detroit, he told me about his parents.
Mm-hmm.
His dad worked at a hospital. And he told me where they were. I went by and met them. They fell in love with me, seeing me for the first time. And when Dad found out I was a nurse, it was like, Dad has no sisters. He only had 3 brothers. It was him and 2 other brothers. So they really, and his dad, it's like he had a daughter that he never had. And his mom was the same way. I was the daughter that they never had. And so when I met his family, it was like I had 2 families here in Michigan. I had my own family, and then I had his family, because I would go by and pick them up and take them up to Milan to visit with him. And we would all sit out on the grass and have a picnic together and everything. And it was, that was like the best part of my life, being able to spend time with him, even though he could spend time with me. Because I knew the moment he left the jailhouse, the next house was going to be the judge house to marry us.
So, Brother Thaddeus, like, I can imagine, this is kind of stressful. You're in here, and then you got, this woman that you love. You want to start a family when you come out. You want to, establish yourself and all of that. How did you, come out and go from coming straight out of prison, jail, and then start to reestablish your life and all of that as a man, young man?
Well, it wasn't hard actually. But the jail part was never having been in jail, but that was
The hardest.
That was the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
Being away, and when that metal door slams shut, and you hear that clang and that key gets turned. Is something. But you get enough to be able to, your friendships in there and the letters from home, and you try to make sure you pray as often as possible, and you're able to get through it. Well, after coming out of there, things just took off. I got out in January of '66, and we got married in April. So it was like just a few months, and things just took off.
But how did you get work and stuff?
I found a job with no, I didn't work at Hammer and Keith. Yeah, I did.
Yes, you did.
My first job where I was down, it was a place downtown called the Top of the Gas Building.
Mm-hmm.
I was waiting tables down there, so that didn't pay enough. So I left there and got a job with the city of Detroit, working in a laboratory, doing laboratory work. I did that kind of work when I was at Milan, because they had a program where you could learn a trade. So I learned, I was in the hospital or the infirmary, I think that's what they call it. So I learned kind of stuff like taking blood and making slides and looking in the microscope for different kind of things. So when I got to Herman Kiefer, I got a job working for the city, and I was doing pretty much the same thing. I was checking urine specimens and other things related to the laboratory. But things were just moving so fast. Went from January to April. It's just so I just kind of like relaxed, and but he did most of the work. So I just went along with the ride. Be here at this time, be there at that time. I said, okay, I'll be there. And so it was a time I like. It was just so good to be out. And knowing that, we were getting married in a few months and everything, I was just so blessed to be alive. And so April 13th, that's when it happened, right?
Oh, yeah, that's so cute. That's so cute. But it makes me think as far as the prison part goes, because people have so many like preconceived notions of when they hear that somebody spends time in prison. Like they have all these, well, what'd you do? Blah, blah, blah. Like they have all these ideas and stuff. And then, I'm working with this other lady. It makes me think of her real quick. Sister Khadija. I think she may be here. But Sister Khadija, her husband went to prison for something he actually did, right? It wasn't like this case, but he went to prison. But it was she talks about like her life supporting someone who was incarcerated, right? So like that's a whole nother stress that comes on the outside. So it's like the person inside has all this stuff, and then the person on the outside, the family members have all that stuff. And then when you come out, like, did you ever have a stigma, or did you ever feel like ashamed of the time that you were in there? Like,
the only concern I had was would I really actually be able to get a job when I came out? Because you always hear about prisoners when they're re-entering society,
right,
having such a difficult time, and they do. Because I've met some brothers at the center who have expressed how difficult it was to find a job.
At the Muslim center you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, you're telling me their experiences when they came out of jail. But I was blessed not to have any problems. It could be that the reason that I was in jail to begin with, because when they ask you, when you fill out an application, they say, have you ever committed a felony? And you say yes or no. And then they're going to ask you in 25 words, so let's explain what happened. So, I guess that part, they read that, they figured maybe I was, okay. But I didn't have a problem. I was only at the city for a short amount of time, maybe 1 year. And then I saw an ad in the paper about General Motors hiring people. So that's where I eventually wound up at General Motors.
Okay.
But
how long did you stay there?
General Motors? 30 years.
So you retired from there. Yeah. Yeah.
Paycheck.
Retirement. Yeah. Like a lot of people moved here. Paid better for the city, had good benefits, you were able to establish a good foundation for a family.
Right.
Yeah.
Back then, but unions were strong back in that day, and you could get a union job, and you could make enough to send your kids to college, or raise in a kind of like a middle class environment. It's a little bit different today, but back then you could do that.
So let's fast forward, because there's a lot of life and years that happen in between there till now, and such. And I think what I want to take away from this particular portion real quick, though, is the notion of one, coming into Islam at a young age. Two, friends and family that introduced you to this new way of life, right? Because they actually you wouldn't know unless your family member, your friend, brought you into this new way of life coming in. Three, establishing a whole new way of living to the point where you decide, okay, I'm going to change my name. I'm going to stop eating certain things. I'm going to, do all this other kind of stuff or whatever. You changed your whole lives. So now, we're going to fast forward way to here. Now you're, how old are you?
80. I'll be 81 in August.
81 in August. Okay.
She's 81.
And I'm 81. I married me a young man.
Good. That was good. So, all right. So 80 and 81, right? Now at this stage of, the experiences and things that you have, like, what do you feel are some of the biggest lessons that you want other people to know or take away, from family, from, religion, from spirituality to all the different aspects? Like, what are some of the things that you like, I really got that lesson?
I think communication.
Communication.
Right, with your spouse, with your wife or your husband.
Mm-hmm.
I think communication is the key. In my opinion.
Why so? Like, why do you say that?
Because I think that problems are going to arise. We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you talk about them and be willing to listen, which I try to do, I'm not that great a talker.
You seem like the listener. She seems like the talker.
So I really step in that role. And I try to listen. And, so we go solve our problems. And we have 5 children. And so we had to listen to their issues and communicate with them, try to let them know our opinions. And so I just think that communication is the key to keeping a family together and growing together into old age and all that kind of stuff. So that's number one.
Communication. All right. Sister Mahija, what do you say? What's your name?
I had always hoped and prayed, and Allah blessed me to do that, is to have a long marriage, healthy marriage, because my parents didn't have one.
And Papa was a Rolling Stone over there.
And I had hoped and prayed. I kind of didn't get that part, but eventually they're still young enough that and ours longevity in terms of marriage and a household and what have you would spill over on our children. We had 3 biological children. We adopted 2 children, 2 boys. And there's only one of them who appears to have gotten what Thad and I have. The other children are no longer married. One, my daughter, oldest one, Jamil, ain't never been married, probably never will get married. And that's always been they don't like me to say that, but that's always been a sore spot in my heart, because she was my first baby, my oldest one. And I remember going to her Makita, because that's where she was born, and going to my room and the nurse bringing her in wrapped up in this blanket. And I open it up and I look at this baby and she says, "Here, mother, here's your new baby." And I look at it and I said, "Are you sure this is my baby?" Because she was so beautiful to me. And I said to the nurse, says, "Well, let me check the bracelet." She says, "You are Bertha May Jones," because we hadn't become cool at that time. And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, yeah, this is your baby." I said, "But this baby is so beautiful." And so throughout her entire life, I had always hoped that, number one, she would get married. And number two, so I would see if her first baby would look like my first baby. And it was just something that just always stuck with me. And because now Jamil is what, 50, 52, and she'll probably never get married now. And if she
does, it depends, right?
Well, it does. Yeah. I know it's I still hope and pray. But I'm sure even if she gets married at 52, she's not going to have any children, or she probably won't. But they're not going to have that bloodline, so I can see if that first baby is going to look like my first baby.
That's so interesting. So you had your dreams wrapped up in your child,
I sure did.
And you feel a little bit dejected because.
Yes, absolutely. I try to. I really try to.
It's interesting, parents.
I know, I know. She's never gonna, and I've accepted it.
I love her the way she
Right,
is.
right. We do. We love her, just the way she is. But I'd always hope at least one of my children would have demonstrated our marriage ability.
And we do have one.
Well,
and
no,
so
we don't. She's been married before. Now she's divorced and she's gonna get married again. So, and see, we've never.
Julie and the third.
I said one.
Okay.
I said we have one, and this one that has well, yeah. Earlier I said there's only one that's going to have adopted Thad and ours relationship, and that's my adopted son. He never knew anything about his mom. Never knew anything about his dad. He don't even question. Well, Ma, what was my? Now here recently.
How old was he when you guys adopted
we
him?
adopted him. Of course, seven when we adopted him.
How did y'all decide to start adopting kids?
Well, because at the time, our oldest son,
our son needed company.
because he was an only boy. Because men are very rare in our family. My grandmother had only one son. My mother had only one son. I had only one son. And my one son, to me, was like a butthead. It was like he didn't want to go to school. He didn't want to go to college. He just wanted to just play around, I guess be a playboy or something like that. And that, I didn't like it. So I thought, well, maybe if we got a brother for him, because when we did things as a family, he'd be the only boy there. Because I had girls, only one boy. And Dolores, well, at the time we only had the one boy, him. My sister Dolores has no sons. My sister Jerry has no sons. So when we would do things as a family, he'd be the only boy there. So we thought, well, maybe if we adopt a boy to go with, to be with him, he would feel better. It didn't work out.
But did the adopted son, did y'all treat him like did you treat him like your son, or did you treat him like he was a playmate for the?
Oh no, we treated him like a son. In fact, we treated him so well that my own son kind of did.
Just a little jealous.
There you go. I was real jealous, right? Absolutely. In fact, and I love Thad's mother dearly because because his mom and his dad, they just adored me because they never had any girls. But his mother, one day I went to visit her and she says to me, by this time we hadn't adopted him. We was just foster parenting him. And she asked me, she says, are you going to adopt him? Because Kareem, that's our biological son. Kareem tells me that you guys are thinking about adopting him. And I said, well, yeah, Mom, we are thinking about adopting him. She says, well, Kareem doesn't like the little fella. So I said to her, I says, but Mom, that's too bad. Because if having to live with this little fella, his name is Laquarius, is the worst thing that our son Kareem will ever have to do in his lifetime, he still will grow up to be a blessed young man. And he is. He's very, money-wise, blessed, beautiful home in California by the beach, by the lake, 2 cars in the garage, not married yet. I mean, he's been married, and I have 2 beautiful grandchildren from his first marriage. But him and April got divorced, and
so so when you guys have these, so as parents, right? So this is interesting to me because I wish I could ask my dad. I know he used to want me to be a lawyer at one point. I remember he really wanted me to be a lawyer. And now he'd be like, you can do this, ZB, and you can do this. And I'm like, what about what I am doing? What about that? So anyway, parents have these expectations. ZB. Yeah. He used to call me Zarinah baby. ZB baby. So it was ZB. But parents have these expectations of the children, even as adults. You still have expectations of your adult children. So I'm wondering from you all, maybe from Brother Thaddeus, from your perspective as the father or such, how do you leave your home, but then also leave room for your children to grow into their own selves?
That's an interesting question. Too bad you didn't ask me that yesterday, so I could be better prepared.
No, man, off the top, off the dome. Don't be looking at her, but Daddy is See, she wants to just say, listening, bro. But Daddy, you was the father. You was the one that was leading this, this home or whatever in that way.
I just try to always spend time with the kids and listen to them. But I'm always trying to give them what I thought they needed, to grow up and be productive members of society. Basically, what we asked of them, of course, we always kind of stressed education in our household. They grew up knowing that we had expectations of them to go beyond high school. And actually, we told them what we wanted them to be.
Like the career?
Yeah, we had.
Like, you the doctor, you the this.
Our oldest daughter was to be the accountant. Aaliyah was to be the doctor. Kareem was to be the attorney. The only one that actually followed the career path that we asked them to follow was Jamila. She became a CPA. But
what about the adopted kids? What did they become?
Aaliyah, she was to be the adopted kids.
Aaliyah was supposed to be a doctor also.
Our adopted children, Lecraeus is a chef. And Camille, he has not found his calling yet.
He's still searching.
He's still searching.
He's still love when you're drunk.
And he had two
but he's the one that's having the difficulty with being adopted. He still has not found his calling. And we're still hoping and we pray for him to be able to find what he needs to get his life really together. And but also we tried to maintain a Muslim household. That was important to us also. But
what's that mean? Like, does that mean praying in the home? Because I find different people, over the years, different people have lived their Islam in quote unquote household in different ways. So, like, what do you say for you?
We try to get them to
Come this way, yeah.
And they all attended the University of Islam.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
Right.
Every last one of them.
They had Islamic education, so we put them in the Muslim school, University of Islam, and Sister Claire Muhammad School, and then ICLAS.
Okay. So your biggest lesson, as you say, is communication, right? Like, that was one of your biggest things. What about from being the husband? So from that side, like the husband, what would you say has been your biggest lesson learned that you can tell other husbands, working out there trying to do good?
I'd say just be there and spend time around the kitchen table. We tried as much to sit down and eat together. So although at times I had to work afternoons, I wasn't there. But when I was there, we tried to sit down and eat together. And I tried to put in time with all of our children. My son, I was in the Boy Scouts. He was in the Boy Scouts. The girls, I tried to make sure that we had some kind of events together. And just to be there and listen to their concerns. And they also expressed our concerns, that making sure they knew what we expected of them, going forward in their lives. How we thought that being a Muslim was important, and how getting an education was important, and letting them know that whatever was on their minds, whatever the issue was, we were there to listen to them. We didn't want to prejudge them in terms of saying, no, you can't bring it. We don't want to hear that. But whatever was on your mind, bring it to us so that we can talk about it.
So communication. All right, so we're going to tidy up, you all. I know I've gone a little bit over, but I want to just give Brother Thaddeus, because so in the book you'll read about his work with real estate. You'll read about his movement around building a community around our local mosque here in Michigan, in the Detroit area, the Muslim Center, and the role that Brother Thaddeus played. Like, I didn't know you gave the houses for $1. I was like, what? Like, you bought these houses and gave them, allowed them to buy them for $1 or such. I think that there's a lot of people that are doing things like behind the scenes that a lot of people don't necessarily, know about.
When I met Mark,
Mhm.
uh,
Mark Crane is the executive director of a nonprofit organization here in Michigan around the mosque. Dream of Detroit is the organization, and well, now it's Dream of Detroit. At that time, it was, what were y'all doing? It was Name of the Deed, right?
We initiated that,
Mm-hmm.
and we were introduced to ICANN. Imam Salim Khalid introduced us to Wasim.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the members of the board for ICANN, and ICANN had been hoping to do some work in the Detroit area, and we were able to convince them to actually come and take a look at what we had proposed for the area around Muslim Center.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he agreed to do that, and after that, Wasim fell in love with the project. And so Wasim and Neighborly Needs came together, and Wasim met a young man in Chicago, which he thought was perfect for the job, and invited him to come to Detroit. Well, actually, he was coming to Detroit anyway, but I invited him to come and see what we were doing also. And that's when I met Mark Crane. And so I was so totally impressed with Mark. And I was so happy that we were actually at that point where the idea of building a community around the Muslim Center could actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of selling them those houses for $1, yeah, to me was a great opportunity.
How many houses did you all have? One or two?
We had 4 or 5 houses.
Y'all had 4 or 5 houses. So this was supposed to be y'all real estate, retirement fund or something. For real. Like, how we try to build up. I'm trying to retire by 50. So, you had 4 houses that you all purchased yourselves, right, on this street with your own money, and then you decided that you were so invested in this idea of the community, having a community around the mosque, that you essentially donated your houses to this movement. Was that a hard decision, or?
No, it wasn't hard at all. No.
It was for me, because I was supposed to get one of them houses. But that didn't happen.
But it comes back.
The big picture,
Right. A lot of people don't know this though. Like, you have a lot of unsung heroes. You have a lot of people that have been working in the silence. Because you're not like one of them loud people that just be like, I gave these houses over here. You know what I mean? Like, you invested it the way that Islam says you're supposed to do it, with your right hand giving without your left hand even knowing or such. But I just want to say thank you all for believing in the community that much, and for really putting your, what do they say, put your hands where your mouth is, like actually doing the work.
Well, it's coming along quite well. And I just feel we're just really blessed here in Detroit to have an effort like Dream of Detroit. And I just wish we had more Muslims in the local area to buy into the effort.
Mm-hmm.
But inshallah, I'm quite confident that it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And we envision having a commercial strip on Woodrow Wilson, Muslim businesses up in that area, and I'm quite confident that we'll be blessed to get there.
It's coming along. It's coming along. All right, Sister Bahija, any final words from you? Because I ain't kept y'all long enough. I know. I'm sorry. Thank you all for staying a little bit longer. But
my only prayer to Allah is that I hope that we can get a lot of young people involved in the community and get them doing things that we'd like to see them do. Now, Jermaine and I have been talking about some, like
Jermaine is a young brother from the Detroit area. Jermaine, big fresh carry. Okay. Mm-hmm.
about and last year we talked about like when you have young people coming in and entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what the thing is called now.
Talent show.
Talent show.
Yeah.
Talent show. Right. Yeah, we talked about a talent show because our young people, they need to be involved in some good Islamic practice kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
We've got young people entertaining, but those young people out there entertaining with half of their clothes off and all kind of ugly music. We need Muslims to come on the scene and become famous musicians and become famous musicians and become musical people, and let the world know that because of our religion, we're the ones who are to lead the goodness in the community and in the world. But we'll never do it if we don't get enough young people to do it. Because us old folk, I don't sing, I don't dance, I don't whatever. But I'm still looking to do that talent search with young people so we can get them in there. And even if we have to send them to Juilliard school or whatever, to further their musical education. And it don't have to be just music, but we need more young people involved in doing things. Because at 81, I don't know how many more years Allah is going to give me. I'm blessed if He gives me 10.
Do you feel old? I always wonder, like I say elders. I don't know, like, do you have any problem with the word elder?
Oh, of course not.
Okay.
Of course not. And when people ask me how old I love telling them I'm 81. Because you know what the first statement they'll say to me? You don't look 81. I've even had people tell me that I'm on the phone talking to them. I can't help it, but I'm talking to people on the phone sometimes. And they'll get around and ask me my birthday, and I'll tell them, well, you don't sound like you're 81. And I'm thinking, well, how much 81 supposed to sound, I feel good that I'm 81, I can't ride a bike, but I didn't do it when I was 13, so I don't think I'm going to do it when I'm 81. But I enjoy but I still want to see young people come into this community and become those entrepreneurs, become those entertainers, become the examples that the world is waiting for because we don't have any. Our young people are, you look at the TV and young folks is on there. I mean, they're doing all the kind of stuff that young black people too, no clothes on, dressed down to here. You can see, it's like, and then when I talk about that, it's like, but they can't hear you. I said, no,
but they can hear you now. Some of them can hear you now. Yeah. Well, alhamdulillah, you all, I want to thank you both for graciously opening up your home to me, for allowing us to come in and, sit down and talk. I learned a lot, not just about you all, but every time I read, like your story in here, it's a little bit that I get so I can try to improve myself. You know what I mean? Like all of us just trying to grow, just trying to be better people, just trying to do things that are going to improve.
That's why I admire you so. You're young and you're doing this. And it's like, if we could get, find about 10 more people like you to do something productive, and this is productive. Yeah, you are. You're an excellent example for our youth.
Appreciate that. So, for those of you all who are here, please drop a comment, share this out so that we can share their story with other people. Any ahas that you got or any, lessons that you all, some gems that you picked up from this, leave some comments as well so that I can share them with Brother Thaddeus and Sister Bahija. Of course, go get the book. It's on Amazon at their feeds. The hardcover is there and the paperback. And lastly, I want to really encourage all of you all to please go and check in with the elders who are in your family. You have some that are able to move around, like Brother Thaddeus and Sister Bahija, that they can get out and move around and, be free and stuff. But you have some that are in their homes and they may not get any calls today or tomorrow with someone checking in on them. So please go and check in with your elders. Ask them some questions about their life, ask them about love, ask them about lessons learned, ask them about their life, because you can learn from them and you don't want to let all of that knowledge and stuff just, blow away or whatever. So please do that, you all. We'll be here next Sunday as well. I think we'll be here live again, inshallah, which means God willing. God willing, we'll be here next Sunday as well. I'll do another interview with some of the other people who are featured in At Their Feet. Oh, Imam Salim is next. It's actually next Saturday. Apologies. It's next Saturday because he teaches on Sunday. So it's next Saturday, and I forgot the time. I will list the time for you all to join us next Saturday with Imam Salim Mukman of Mali, and we'll be there. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much for coming and allowing us to give you our input.
Yay! All right. Bye, everybody.